Hi, welcome back to Empowered. I'm your host, Kelly.
And Tatiana, how are you guys?
Well, today we're talking about marriage and then also a little bit about going through
The
divorce.
pain.
Yeah, well, marriage, pain, and then divorce, and obviously from the pain of divorce to peace afterwards.
Correct.
And I was going to let Tatiana share her story of when she was married and kind of coming through that
Right.
relationship.
So I met my ex um, husband in 2007. Okay, so I met him. It was kind of rocky from the beginning. I was so young. I was 19 years old, and he was 25.
Oh, okay.
And actually, he was 27, and he lied to me, told me he was 25. So yeah, bad start. You know what I
Right,
mean? I
right,
mean, I
right.
can laugh about it now,
Right.
but then I was just like, oh my god, like you're old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I was just thinking that I was just fresh out of high school. I never really had a serious relationship, and I actually was sharing a bit of my testimony this morning with my mom, and then I told her he was just so manipulative, and I was just an innocent, girl, and he was like, I was like, man, I just feel like I was never exposed to anything. I told my mom like I wasn't never exposed to anything. Like we never really talked about boyfriends or relationships. That everything I knew was pretty much from school or from church. Whatever conversation. So I really didn't know much, or my friends. Like as far as like relationships and how do they function.
Right.
Um, so I met him, and everything he would tell me, I believe everything he would tell me. He loved me. He did this, and he was very extreme too. He's very like obsessive, I can say. Like whenever he used to, like he wanted to play softball, he'll go all out. He'll buy softball bats, books. He'll do YouTube videos. He will do whatever.
Yeah.
He'll just go all out and be very extreme. And so, it was not anything different when he met me. Like um he bought me a brand new laptop. I mean, I'm 19 in 2007. That's a big deal. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I got a digital camera from him. I got like so many gifts. He was uh, love bombing me, I guess you can say.
Okay.
And so he bought me. There's not a thing that he wouldn't do for me. Like
Yeah.
he even bought things and cell phones for my family.
Okay.
He would just do everything,
Yeah.
right? So I thought it was great. I thought this was the man of my life, and I loved him. He loved me. And everybody around us would always tell us like, man, he loves you so much. You know what I mean? Like we were just inseparable from day one.
Yeah.
So from then, I kind of separated myself from him because of the lying and the cheating initially.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm not going to be with this person. And I told him straight up, if you want to be with me, you can't be doing, you can't be, I'm not going to be in a love triangle. So I don't know where that even language came from, because I was like, I was 19 again, you know what I mean? So I'd
Yeah.
be like, I'm not that person. Tatiana is not going to, again, that pride
Yeah.
back then. I was like, Tatiana's not going to go for that. You know what I mean? And, long story short, we decided to move in together eventually, get back together, move in together. Then 2010, we got married. And I mean, it was already bad. And I thought that marriage was going to fix it,
Yeah.
like everyone else thinks that sometimes, like,
Yeah.
oh, let's just get married,
Yeah.
Um, and we got married because obviously, I wasn't Christian at the time, but I was raised in a Christian home, so I believe that if I were to get married, maybe God would bless it, and then by um, the fights and arguments and everything else that I felt would go away.
Yeah.
And main thing was because he wasn't a man of God. You know, we would go to church once in a while. You know what I mean? He was, but he wasn't taking that role, you know, seriously. And so, you know, I don't blame him. He grew up without a father, so I believe that was a big part of why he was the way he was.
Yeah.
And he had kind of had to grow up, you know, fast as a young kid. So he had just a bad childhood, and he brought it into the relationship, and it showed.
Yeah.
I grew up in you know, in a Christian home with both my parents. You know, they were so loving.
Yeah.
And they basically gave me everything they could give me. You know, not everything I wanted, but everything that I needed. You know, even if it was just rice and beans and tortillas sometimes. You know.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, we had a roof in our head, and I was just grateful. You know, because not every kid can do that. You know, I was just I didn't have to grow up fast like he did. You know, so. I just feel like that was part of why he was the way he is. And so that is why it's so important to, you know, make sure that as a believer, you're seeking for a partner that is seeking God as well. You know what I mean? And I believe that it makes all the difference.
Yeah.
So
100%. I think we rush into something you probably didn't consult God when you chose to date this man, and then wind up marrying him, knowing that you had issues. God probably would have told you get some premarital counseling, go to, you know, an older couple and let them mentor you before you go and get married.
Correct.
But we don't do that. We typically we meet somebody, you fall in love with them, and then you think, I can fix them, or us being married together, living together, that'll make things better. It'll make it better.
I feel that it was kind of like a joke because my father is a marriage counselor. So, yeah. So my dad would always tell me, hey, you should be this type of wife and this, you know, he would always tell me what I should be as a wife. Correct. But then I was like, well, he didn't prepare me about, you know, how a man should be, you know what I mean? So I'm just taking it. I'm like, wow, really? These are like, but this is just me as a non-believer that knows God.
Right.
And well, how do
you were a lukewarm Christian, basically.
Lukewarm. So I guess a non-Christian that knew about God. I don't know. I really don't know how to explain it.
You grew up in church, so you knew of God, but you weren't walking it. You weren't living it. Yeah. And then you, living in the world, you choose who you chose, not who God would have chose for you.
Right.
And then that's where the problems start, because you got two people that are living for themselves, not necessarily living the way God intends us to live. And so it's you and your husband, right? And the way God designed marriage is, it's not just you and your husband, because the world will tell us it's a give and take, it's a 50-50, but truth, and it's two people, you know, sometimes, you know, this person is going to, and which is true, there's times that your mate is going to not, you know, have the strength, not be able to do some things, and so you're there to be their helpmate and lift them up. But we need God in the center of it.
Right. Yeah.
And if we don't have,
and we didn't have that.
Yeah.
And because he didn't take the role as a man, and perhaps maybe because he just didn't know how. You know what I mean? He just, let's just wing it, like, you know, a lot of people do. Yeah. And don't blame him. I thank God for him, you know what I mean? Because everything I know and everything I went through after was because of him, and the things I had to go through by myself as a person that was left by, you know, her husband. It made me stronger. Like, I would have never been able to be independent and, you know, find and do certain things that I needed a man for, or my husband for, you know what I mean? So I just feel like he showed me a couple things in this world, basically the tools for me to make it through after divorce, and he didn't even realize that he's the one who taught me how to just be an adult. Basically I was 19, so and by the time we got married I was 23. Okay. And and it didn't help that I was always a know-it-all, and I always acted like I was the smartest, and I would always challenge him, and it was just very unhealthy relationship. But the good parts were good, and that justified all the bad stuff. That was just like, well, I got bad things going on, but it could be worse or whatever. And then the worst did happen later. So I would always say, like, I don't know, I would always challenge him, especially when we would drink. Like, we would start drinking, and then obviously, when you're not a Christian, the enemy takes advantage of you and just, be like, okay, well, here you go. You're, and once we get drunk, it was over. Like, we would argue, we would, sometimes they even got physical. And he wasn't abusive by any means, like as far as like physical abuse or anything like that. He would always try to stop me. That was his thing. Like, I would always get crazy and I would start like hitting. And so one time, he did get really upset because I hit him in his nose or something, obviously naturally of a man. That's why I tell everyone, like all the girls, like, if you hit a man, get ready to be striked, because a man, could only still take so much, And so the last time that I hit him, like, he literally hit me. Like, he full fist went ahead and hit me. And that was, I don't know if it cured me or helped me, but ever since that day, I never touch a man. I never raised my hand. I never, nothing. I never even argue with the man, because I'm like, I'm not, what, what I mean? What for,
Yeah.
So
well, it's never okay for either a man or a woman to put their hands on another. And I'm kind of a proponent for, you put your hands on a man, you're asking to be hit back, but never is it okay. No. Male or female.
No, not at all.
And so, one time is one too many.
Yeah.
But
I even hate to say this, because I don't want to put anybody in a bad light out there, but just in that's why I wanted to make sure that everybody knows he was not an abusive person whatsoever. Mentally, maybe. Yeah.
Well,
but you were saying physically, no.
Yeah, you're saying he hit you in defense of you.
Correct.
Him.
So he hit me that one time. He hit me good, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not that strong then after all. You know what I mean? I was just like, okay. So then I never did that after that. But so that's kind of like the beginning of the end. Then I find out he was doing drugs. I gave him and I told him, hey, listen, if you want to do that, that's fine, but don't expect me to be here. Yeah. And I believe that, especially back in the days, women would be like, stick to your man, it don't matter what he do. If he cheats on you, it's okay. He's your husband. You know what I mean? Like, you can do whatever you want. And I was the type of person who's like, and you remember when I told you I was kind of adapted the feminist mindset, and so I was like, no way am I gonna do that, especially Tatiana, me, no. So I stood, and I meant business. I broke up with him. I said, you need to go. I don't know what you do. And a lot of people judged me because I did that, and a lot of people were like, well, it's not just your boyfriend, he's your husband. And well, at that time I didn't care, because I wasn't Christian, so I didn't think that, if I got a divorce, oh well, good, that's what I wanted, because how can I, Tatiana, be married to an addict? You know what I mean? So that was that's what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking about helping him. I wasn't thinking about doing like that, anything like that, because I felt in my heart that if he wanted to do drugs, he loved drugs more than he loved me. So why would I be with somebody that didn't even care for my feelings or how I felt, or, you know, I don't want to talk for his daughter but, you know, even for his daughter, that it affected everyone in our family, especially me and his daughter. So, and I seen the pain that it caused all of us. And so I just kind of, I guess the enemy took advantage of that moment and put a lot, I don't want to say hate, but he put a lot of like, because I didn't hate him. I really didn't. I just thought that it was just so like the nerve. I would just feel like the nerve of you just doing all this to us. You know what I mean? And I would always try to be, I thought that I was doing him a favor by telling him, hey, you're not going to be with me, because I thought that he did. Deep inside, I knew he loved me, but he loved drugs more. So I felt like maybe if I played him, I was trying to do a chess move here. If I played him and told him I was going to leave him, he would leave the drugs, but he didn't.
So you basically gave him an ultimatum of it's either me or the drugs.
Right.
But you didn't realize it at the time, but you're dealing with an addict and addicts.
And I didn't know how, I never had dealt with anyone that did drugs. I never, if it was like weed or whatever, but weed smokers are way different than an addict,
Right.
But I had to just, I don't know, I feel like I was trying all these different things with him, get with his mom, get with my parents, see what we could do together, or but ultimately, like, he just decided to leave. And so with that, I was like, we kept going back and forth, like, breaking up, getting back together, breaking up and getting back together. And finally, I decided to go to California. I was like, I'm going to get away from him. And this was already 2014, so it's been like 3-4 years that we've been going back and forth, and he doesn't change, And so I went to California, and I was out there for a good 6 months, I want to say. And when I came, no, I didn't come back. So I was there 6 months. I didn't hear from him. I didn't see him. I wanted nothing to do with him. I just wanted a divorce. At that point, I was living my life already. And, one day he emails me, and because I don't even know how he got a hold of me. He just emailed me. And
did you have him blocked on everything?
Yes, I blocked him. So
that's why he emailed you.
Like, right.
He
yeah, because he didn't know my number, actually. I changed it, and so I don't know what happened, honestly, in that middle, but I remember him contact me through email. That's all I remember. And when I heard from him, my heart dropped, because it's like, this is my husband. This is, person I married. And long story short, he was like, well, come, I'll get you a ticket, And so he brings me back to Texas. And and this is the plan of God, because I feel like if it wasn't for God, and if it wasn't for him, I would have stayed in California. You know what I mean?
Was your family still in California?
So I was over there. My grandma at the time, she was still there. My cousins and a few of my mom's sisters and brother was there. My dad's brother. I still got a lot of people over there. So anyway, so I come back, and well, come to find out, he doesn't have a house or a home. Yes. So I was like, where are we going? Oh, we're just going to go to Holiday Inn. What? I know. So I was like, okay, well, I guess, because I'm like, well, obviously my parents are here, but I'm like, I'm not going to my parents' house. I have a whole husband over here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I guess, I made the decision to come back. So I just need to stay with him and stick with it. So we're going from hotel to hotel.
Oh.
Yeah. So
This is
1 week at a time.
While he's in addiction.
Correct.
Okay. I was going to say, because it sounds like an addict.
Right.
From hotel to hotel.
Right.
Not that it's funny, but I'm just saying, like.
No, it's funny now, but
your life was probably in chaos.
Oh,
but that's
very
what
much so.
The addiction does.
And whenever he told me to come back, I had actually went out of town with my friend that weekend. And so he tells me, it's okay, just leave everything, just come. So I come with a backpack, Kelly. I didn't even have my stuff with me. I left everything in California, everything. So everything I have now, and it's by the grace of God. You know what I mean?
Because you just pretty much just picked up and came back.
Basically, I just had whatever I had on and a change of, I think, 2 outfits in my backpack. And that's all I had. And I came back from California to come be with him. And so I just remember being in the hotel, and sometimes he wouldn't show up. I would just sit there and just be like, are you coming? Or, you know, he would tell me he's working, but if it was true or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
So he would tell me he's working, and I would just sit there and just ask God, like, I would pray my prayer, even though I wasn't a Christian, or, you know, back to being in communication with God. But I would just be like, you know, what's going on? Like, and I wouldn't call anybody. Like, you know how people just call and they just tell their problems to people? I wouldn't be that person. You know, I was so prideful. I was like, I didn't want nobody to see how bad I was doing, you know?
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's like, we just shelter ourselves, and that's what I did, basically. So
probably a little bit of maybe shame for you, like
for
embarrassment
sure.
that this is your life.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit too a protection of him, probably. Just because it is your husband, and you came back because you wanted to make it work, and so people are gonna be like, what's going on?
Right.
What are you talking about? I thought y'all were getting back together, y'all were good, all those things.
And so my cousin, I actually, God bless her, because she was the only one that really truly would check up on me. And she was like, hey, have you ate yet? And I was like, no. So she comes, picks me up, and so we go eat somewhere. And that day I needed to check out because he was at work, so I needed to check out and go to a different room, wherever he told me to go. And then check in that one. And so we're there, and then when we're there, he's checking in with another girl.
Oh, Jesus.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's crazy. So when I seen that, I was like, and then my cousin's like, what you want to do? Because but then I was like, no, I was like, I'm not that girl. I've never been that girl, and Tatiana could never be that girl. Right. You know what I mean? Again, the pride.
Yeah. So you said let her have him.
Yeah. I was like, and I told the lady, and the lady was literally witnessing everything. I was like, hey, can you actually put me at the end of the hotel, and then wherever they're at, whatever, you know? So she's like, okay. And so I'm over here just like crying, like on the side, like I try to turn my face because my cousin's like, my cousin, are you okay? And I'm like, yes, you know, trying to be brave.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I just feel like I don't know, the nerve, you know, like I was just like, oh, this little guy.
I was gonna say, I can see you saying the audacity.
The audacity of this guy, yeah. Because I mean, it's. I mean, I would say bad words, you know. It's just like, oh, this guy, whatever, you know, whatever. But deep inside, I was like, I deserve better. You know what I mean? Like, this is pretty much over.
Yeah. And
that's one of the cases, and one of the times that I was left at a hotel by him. So then the next following day, he had my stuff because he took it with him since I had to move. We had to move, you know, rooms. Yeah. So he took all my stuff with him. And mind you, he was with the girl.
Yeah.
So, and this is where this is me thinking, oh, I'm so smart because I text the girl, and I was like, hey, I seen you and my
Yeah.
name. I was like, together. I was like, hey, I was wondering. I was like, first of all, congratulations. Whatever, y'all back together. I don't want nothing to do with him, and I was just kind of playing it like I wanted nothing to do with him, so she can give you my stuff.
Yeah.
And so she's like, oh, it's okay. You're very nice. So I was like, F you, girl. You know what I mean?
Yeah. As you were texting?
Yes. Because I didn't have her number. I found her on Facebook.
Oh,
so
okay.
that's how I was able to communicate with her.
Yeah.
And so I kind of tried to use her like good side,
Oh, okay,
and her, be like, hey, listen, I understand, because I guess they were dating before, or that time that
When
I
y'all
was
were
gone.
separated? Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess they met and they had been together, and come to find out, she kicked him out whenever he brought me back to Texas.
Yeah.
And so it was a whole hot mess there.
Yeah.
Right. And so anyways, she comes and feels bad for me, and I guess she said, okay, well, we'll bring you your bag.
Yeah.
And so he brings me my bag, and then I'm just like, I just want to talk to him, because he won't even talk to me at this point. I'm just telling him, like, what is your deal? I'm your wife,
Yeah.
because I didn't want to argue with
the girl.
Yeah. And I never argue with any of, because he had a lot. Okay. It wasn't just one,
Yeah.
And so this girl comes and they leave the bag in the door, and I just seen his back, he like runs to the car, because he obviously don't want to see me or talk to me or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm just like bawling, like I'm just like, this is the end of the world, I was just thinking, in my young mind.
Yeah. You
So
were what, 24?
Right.
25, something like that? Okay.
At that point, yeah. And so I was just thinking, like, he just left me like that, And again, whenever they would argue, he would try to come back with me. And long story short, in the last straw is when I did give him a second, like the last chance.
Yeah.
I was like, that's it, and he would come back to me, obviously, when he would try to be sober, whenever he was trying to change.
Right.
And do all that. Oh, got this, got that,
Right.
So he sets me up because it's Valentine's Day that weekend. And so we go to the movies. And at this point, he got me a hotel room separately from him. And so we meet up, because at that point I already had a car. I already had a job, and I got myself a car, and I was able to move on with my life, or try to, get up from that, just having that backpack.
Yeah.
And so, so I go pick him up, because he don't even have a car. And so we go to the movies, and then I come back, and he goes, here, just drop me off at the liquor, or not the liquor store, the corner store. And then I'm like, why do you want me to drop you off there? I was like, so he made it a big deal. And I was like, this guy's not acting and doing a big deal just to, I was like, something's going on. Right. So I drop him off.
You stake him out.
And then no, I go to his room.
Oh.
And then I knock on the door.
Yeah.
And then it's his cousin. His cousin opens. There are a bunch of, I don't know who is in there. And then some girl that I know is in the restroom. And the girl's like, oh, what are you doing here? And I'm like, so I'm his wife. And she goes, oh, okay. So I go in the restroom, because that's what my excuse was. I was like, I need to use the restroom. So that's why they let me in.
Oh, okay.
So I go in the restroom, I close the door, and then that girl had left her phone there. Because every single time that he, that I would be like, I wouldn't believe that he would just leave me like that. I wouldn't. So this time it was different, because I seen the evidence. And so I seen that girl's, and she left it open, and he was telling her, get out, because my wife is coming. Yeah. So I read all the messages between them, and then she's like, what are you talking about? What am I supposed to do? And I don't know what else. So that's basically like the pain, the part. I mean, now when I talk about it, it's kind of like nothing to me
Yeah.
because that pain is gone and
Right.
it's buried and it's dead, you know.
Yeah.
But there's people out there that go through that and are going through that
Yeah.
currently, recently, and I just feel like this part of my life, God had a plan in order for me to take me where I needed to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I feel like every step of the way, he was there with me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I only know that it was God, you know what I mean? Because I never wanted to hurt anyone. I never thought of, you know, harming myself or things like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even through the pain. And I dare to say because of the pride too, because I'm like, I'm not gonna let this guy, you know, make me feel, you know, whatever. So, so that day, that was the day I looked at, when I was in the restroom, I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, never again, Tatiana. Yeah. I literally like probably cried. And I even asked her, I was like, hey, listen, were you with, you know, so and so? And she didn't say anything. She just nodded her head. She was like, yeah. I was like, okay. And again, I wasn't gonna take it off on her, you know. Yeah. She's not. I'm not married to her.
No.
So that's why.
Yeah, she didn't have any loyalty to you. It was him who married you and had the loyalty to you. So absolutely, God was still there with you. It's again like I was saying or mentioned earlier, it's like we get ourselves into some of these situations without consulting God, but He doesn't leave us there. He doesn't let us, you know, okay.
Because we think we know better.
Yeah.
And we don't.
Absolutely.
By all means. That's why I gave my whole entire life to Christ, you know, and that's why I've changed. And that's why I feel like every single step of the way, and I don't know if I've told you before, but I feel like even after my husband had left me, I felt God's fingerprint in that situation. God was there. Right. This situation here, God was there. Yeah. And you know, because even after my divorce or my separation with him, I told myself I wouldn't, and I told myself I wouldn't date anyone else until I healed myself or I was in a healing process or whatever. Yeah. So I dated, and then I kind of broke my own rules, and I dated somebody, and come to find out he's like a stalker. And yeah, and so it kind of scared me, for real. And so I was like, you know, I'm definitely not dating anybody anymore. You know what I mean? So so for a whole year, I didn't text anybody. I didn't call anyone. I didn't have no communication with the opposite sex. If I would go out, I would just obviously have with my friends and whoever, you know, they were around. So obviously I didn't make any good choices. So the times I did get like drunk and I almost had this situation of danger of, man, God saved me from DUIs. God saved me from potentially maybe even death. You know what I mean? So that is the testimony that God has done in my life. You know what I mean? Because becoming or coming to Christ, He just gave me all the emptiness and that void that I had, I was looking for my entire life. And so
what you were trying to find in the husband, you found it in God, in your relationship with Him.
Correct. So there's not a moment of my life, I mean, that I'm not singing, that I'm not trying to pray to God, you know what I mean? Even today at the grocery store with my mom, she's like, why are you always humming like an old lady? Because, you know, I'm like, I have this song in my head. And so I'm like, I'm praising God, you know? Yeah. And so, well, thank God that, you know, that was over and done with, you know what I mean? It does continue. Like, I did, 10 years later, so 2024, was it last year? Oh, no, this year. Oh, no. Year. Okay, so yes, last year, 9 years later. Okay. God brought him back to my life. And I just felt like, is this even possible? You know, like I tried.
Oh, okay.
And so that is the reason why it's very important to stick to what God has for you.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? And listen to God, because those are the consequences of not listening to God and or just trying to seek God's will for your life.
Yeah.
Because had I done it the correct way, had I been obedient to God, I probably would have never been in that situation again where it happened all over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I just felt like I surrendered my life. And I gave my life to Christ in the beginning of 2023. And I surrendered my life this year. You know, there's a difference.
Right.
But God was, you know, I was still doing certain things that God didn't, you know, it's not of God, you know what I mean? And I was still struggling with sin, still struggling with certain things, but thank God he's faithful and he still loved me through all that.
Yeah.
And you know, he forgives me, and that's why I'm just, you know, all that. He forgave all that, and that's why I'm all in.
Yeah.
And
so
yeah. So that's
you said
what happened.
you tried again last year. Had he changed? Had he like grown and had he gotten sober?
Actually, no. Well, in the beginning, yes. When I started to work things out with him,
Okay.
I was like, there's no okay, because during COVID, I tried to divorce him, and so I took that as maybe it's God. Maybe he just kept us legally married for us to come back together.
Yeah.
So, and so I really thought that was it. Like maybe God did give me my husband back after this, you know, after I gave my life to him and whatever, you know. But again, it takes two to be obedient to God's, you know, to what you have, what God's called you to do. Yeah. So, I did my part and he just didn't, you know, and he would tell me, oh, you came and destroyed my life because I was doing so good, you know, my ex. I was doing so good. I had a good job. I had a girlfriend, you know, I guess that he was with. And I told him, listen, the enemy allowed you to have that life.
Yeah.
Because now he's seeing that you're trying to do the right thing by going to your wife. Yeah. If that was even the case. Yeah. Right? But you have a girlfriend. You're going to church. Mm-hmm. You're doing these you're sinning, right? Cuz I mean, it's not your wife. Yeah. So, you're sinning. You have a good life. You're sober. He's allowing you to be sober because he wants you to think that you're good, but you're in sin. Yeah. Like, how is that? No, it's God is not crazy. God is, you know what I mean? You're still married to someone else. God doesn't bring you a spouse when you're married. Right. You know what I mean?
He won't bless that relationship.
He's not going to bless anything until, you know what I mean? And that's why I kind of had to figure that one out on my own. Yeah. And so I just felt like the moment he was trying to fix his life and do things right with God and with his wife, which was me, obviously. Yeah. Then I felt like that's when the enemy was like, "Oh, no. I'm not gonna allow you to go back." So then he brought addiction back to his life. Yeah. Because he even told me I've been sober a year or however long he was out, because he got out of jail, then he got a job, and then, you know, he was sober. Okay. And he was doing good. Yeah. Up until the moment when he got back with me. Oh, you know, okay. So he was good for a couple months, and then he ended up doing drugs again. Oh, okay. So then obviously that's when we went our separate ways again. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then remember when I told you I was at peace. That's the moment where God's like, okay,
Yeah.
you had enough, because I can give you some more to hit rock bottom.
Right.
And I feel like I was like, yeah, God, I surrender this time. Your will, your will, not mine.
Yeah.
So that's definitely the difference between the Christian Tatiana then and the Christian Tatiana now.
Yeah.
The difference is that I'm seeking God's will, and I'm seeking to be obedient in what is, what the Bible is telling me to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I pray that he, I've never met him either. So,
yeah.
I mean, just pray that he's gotten sober and then, is able to do life sober.
He's definitely sober now. He's in jail.
Oh.
So.
Well, sometimes that will save someone's life.
Yeah.
But I'm sure for his family, they don't,
And the last time I did talk to him, because, he called me and he told me, hey, Tatiana, I'm sorry. Obviously now that he's sober, I realized I hurt you. And he just apologized. I mean, I appreciate it. And I thank God that, I don't have any hate towards him.
Yeah.
And I love that he is sober. And I just
you
just
want
bless
good things
him,
for him.
and thank you for the positive things that he did show me, because he had a really good heart as well.
Oh, okay.
Like he had a very giving heart.
Right.
And so that's part of the of him that I took, and now I used to be given, I'm more because of him, more so because of him.
Yeah.
So he was very giving, very loving, kind, funny, very funny guy. And whenever Miranda met him, she's like, oh, I can see why you like him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he was very, but those are the type of people.
Guy.
Yeah, very. And those are the people that the enemy likes to use, because they draw people in, and then he does whatever with them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not only that, like, I feel like I always used to tell him, like, you're a great, powerful man if you let God, you're a great man of God. I would always tell him, and he's like, oh, I know, and everything I used to tell him would come true. You know what I mean? So sometimes he'd tell me to shut up for real, because he's like, don't say that. You know what I mean? Like, and I told him, listen, I was like, God is giving you the last chance right now. And I told him on the phone after he apologized, I was like, listen, I wish you well, and I care for you and what happens to you, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do believe God's giving you the last chance. I said, God is going to take you out of there as soon as you truly give your heart and change for him.
Yeah.
And then he was like, no, they're going to give me 4 years. I was like, no, listen to what I'm saying. I said, God is giving you the last chance. And if you repent and give your heart in 2 weeks, God in 2 weeks is going to take you out. If you don't do it within, 4 years, he's going to keep you there longer.
Yeah.
So anyways, he's like, oh, don't say that, because, he knows this is going to come true. But I'm like, you just be obedient to God. Like, he could be used by God. He just chooses not to. You know what I mean? He has a gift for sure. You know what I mean?
No.
And so, God bless him and his family. If they ever even listen to the podcast, I don't know if they would, but yeah. And
so is Gutierrez, is that his last name?
No, Gutierrez is my maiden name.
Okay.
Yeah,
so you just took all that. Okay,
right.
Okay.
I used to be Barron, so that's my married name. So
yeah.
People be like, Barron, where's that?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, obviously, if he struggled with addiction, and that doesn't excuse the cheating or the lying or any of the things that he did, but I imagine he's dealing with some pretty dark demons.
For sure.
To be.
I mean, he witnessed people dying, overdosing, and it still didn't change him.
Yeah. I mean, like I said before, I've never dealt personally with addiction. Like, I don't struggle with it, but right. I know people that have, and I've worked with a bunch of addicts, and it's not something that they willingly really want to do. I think they get so far into it, and it has a hold on them, and they can't. But it changes them as a person.
But you know what? He did confess to me one time that he was so doing so low. He didn't have no money. He didn't even have a car. He didn't even have a phone. And he said that he was in the streets walking to God knows where. And he said, "Devil, if you're real, give me a cell phone right now." And the and he's telling me this story. And he goes, as I walk in, like within the block, there's a phone right there in the floor. And then he goes, "Man, this isn't real. This is a coincidence, you know?" Yeah. So then he goes, he asked for another sign. I was like, and then he said he freaked out, so he stopped asking.
Yeah, why would you ask the devil if he's real?
Right. And so he's just very scary when it comes to things like that. So I was like, what is, but he's like, but that's how the enemy was going after me. This is him sober telling me, these stories. And he was just, they had witchcraft on him. They had there's a lot more to the story. Yeah. But that's his story to tell. Right. And I just feel like there will be one day, hopefully.
Maybe in prison, in jail, he's witnessing to people and does, find his way back to God.
Yeah, so, for sure.
Because, we've talked about nobody's beyond redemption.
For sure. No. Only the devil.
Right. Only the. The other day I was in the store and I happened to see this dad with his little girl, and he had let her out of the basket. She was probably like 3 years old, and so as soon as he let her down, she took off running down the aisle, and he's walking after her slowly, because if you chase kids, they think it's a game, especially little like that. Yeah. So they're gonna run even faster.
This is not a game.
And so I'm watching this, that he's telling her, come back here, and whatever her name was, I can't remember what he was calling her, and she's like laughing, giggling, and kind of just doing her little toddler walk down the aisle, away from the registers, away from the basket, down the aisle. And I am laughing because I know that she's going to just keep running. And this dad is like, I have to follow her so she doesn't get hurt or somebody doesn't come and get her. But he's slowly just kind of walking behind her because he doesn't want to run, because then she'll just run faster. And he saw me and I was like, it's funny, but it's not funny. And he's like, yeah, looking at me, because the same, he wants to laugh too, but he knows I gotta follow my kid, or they're gonna get lost or hurt. And it just made me think of, that's how God is with us.
For sure.
He's just right there, right behind us every time we're making all these poor choices, getting ourselves into relationships, or just different things in life that we know we have no business in doing. He's right there behind us. And sometimes we're running, even though he's not running to pull us back. He's just right there beside us. He stays the same pace as we do, but it's always out of protection and always trying to
bring you back.
Come back here to me. Come back to daddy. Basically is what that little girl was running from. But as soon as another person came at the other end of the aisle, she turned and she went right back to her dad. And that is where it God put it on me that's exactly what he does with us. And we sometimes we go straight ahead to this person that is dangerous. Luckily for this little girl, she's like, no, I got to go to my daddy, and ran right back to him. But it was just something that God, put on me in my thoughts as I'm watching this play out. I love kids in general, so I'm always just watching them do stuff. And I just saw that, and I just thought of when mine were little, doing stuff like that, and how you're afraid that they're going to either run into something, get hurt, or somebody's going to grab them, so just we'll follow after them. But that's what he does with us every single day of our life.
Yeah, he definitely did that for me.
Yeah.
And I mean, everyone else.
Yeah, he's doing
but
that with him, probably in jail.
Oh, for sure.
Wherever he's at.
Yeah, yeah. I just hope that this story helped somebody to just realize that if you're like in some type of same situation with like, you know, maybe not get a divorce on the ledger, but try to seek help. I mean,
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with trying to get counseling and trying to work it out. But I think you saw the clear signs and probably knew that God didn't want you to stay in a situation like that. Because He doesn't ever call us to stay in a situation that is physically abusive or even infidelity, things like that. And so, even though he did it while he was in addiction, it's still, not okay. And it was not anything that you had to stay in. I think, obviously, that it was your ego that got you out of that.
Right.
But God knew your ego was going to get you out of it. So
Yeah.
he allowed that and used it to.
Yeah, and he just, when people start doing drugs, they're so manipulative. Like when with me, he would always be like, make me feel bad about spending money or, with drugs comes with, like I was telling you, women and gambling and drinking and everything else, stealing. You know what I mean? One time he asked me to steal basically for him. In other words, not literally go to the store and steal it, but some type of form that it was stealing. And even me, not a Christian, I knew it was wrong, and more that I was scared to go to jail. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm not going to jail for you.
Right.
So he said, "Oh, I want a down chick." He's screaming at me like, and I'm just like, I'm down to work. I'm like, please, like, I don't want to do that. Like, but I mean, this is the type of attitude and just behavior an addict does. Like, they want to manipulate you to do what, and not only that, like, I was surprised he didn't try to give me drugs, because that's another thing drug addicts do. Like, they try to start giving you drugs so you can become an addict just like them, and then y'all can live happily ever after in their la la land. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So then who's gonna pay the bills? I don't know. But in most of the girls that he would go with, there were drug addicts. All of them. I dare to say all of them were drug addicts, except for me. I've never. Thank you so much, Jesus, that he saved me from that, because God knows, like, where I would have ended. You know what I mean? Like, it was my dad's prayers, because he would tell me, like, thank God you didn't do any drugs. You know what I mean? Like, I could have done it. Yeah, exactly. Easily done it, being surrounded by that. And for a very small period of time, he even convinced me, hey, this is what we need to do in order for us to put food on our plates. You know what I mean? And so I was against it. And that's why we used to argue all the time.
Yeah.
But what can you do? This is your husband. This is the man of the, you know what I mean? And I just thank God that he saved me from all that. From just, it could have been worse. I always say it could have been worse, even though that was my bad. It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
But I feel like it could have been worse. I could have found him dead somewhere. You know what I mean? Or shot. And he told me numerous of times how in that world they almost killed him plenty of times, for the things that he did. You know what I mean? So once whenever his daughter called me one time crying, when they got him last, I thought he was dead, like, honestly. I just thought that he was dead, because she was crying, and I was like, oh, that's it. That's the phone call I've been waiting all my life,
Yeah.
So, but luckily he wasn't, and he just went to jail. Obviously, she was upset. And so, but, I mean, it's just one of those calls. It's like, what is it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Everything you went through with him, it's only, like, that's the next thought. If they don't get help,
For
in
sure.
prison or dead. So
Yeah. In my life is God promised my father his children. So I believe I'm under that promise, and that's why God wanted, was pressing so hard to come back to him, you know what I mean? And I wanted nothing more but to just get away from him, and then I started searching for something. Little did I know it was God.
it was, yeah.
Yeah. I was like, what is it? Like, but yeah.
Well, no, thank you for sharing that with me, and with everybody else.
Yeah, the whole world.
Right.
Whoever watches this,
No, and I know that you tried to do this respectfully, obviously not say
his name,
his name, protection of him and his loved ones and things like that. But we definitely wanted to talk about this topic just because there's other people.
And they're very lovely people. I mean, his mom is very, very sweet, very giving, and to me at least, and so, and his family too. So God bless them.
Well, and that's not an indicator of they couldn't be abusive, or they will be a good spouse just because they came from a good family.
Correct.
Or loving family.
Yeah.
Each one of us.
He grew up different from his other brothers and sisters, because he had a different father.
Okay.
And so I feel that's where it was kind of like a disconnect there. But again,
his story
to
tell.
Yeah,
exactly.
And his story to tell. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for sharing that with all of us, and that's kind of all I have today. I don't know.
No,
if
I
there's
think
anything
that's
else.
it.
Well, we thank you for sitting with us and listening today, and always, like we always say, share, like.
Yeah, share, like, subscribe.
Yeah, all the things, and then
we got some merch. Right?
Yeah, that's I was gonna say. We both were.
I was trying to get like a cup or something.
Yeah. We have some merch in below, so check it out. I think we have a couple of new things on there. So
shout out to Christina for getting one of our journals.
Yes, she received her book bag and her T-shirt. So I imagine she'll send us. Yeah, she'll send us a picture of that. But until next time, bye.
All right, bye.